joining us today from YouTube Live. Welcome to today's panel discussion. Our topic for the panel today is how to build your Web3 startup in the UK. Briefly, here is our agenda for today. After the panel discussion today, we will have a short Q&A session. So make sure to put your questions in the comments or the live chat so we can fit them to our panelists today. So briefly, before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Albert, your moderator for today. I'm a venture developer at the Blockchains Founder Group. For those of you who haven't heard before, what is BFG? Blockchains Founders Group is a company builder and also a venture capital. We have an investment track record of over 45 startups since 2016. We invested in various Web3 businesses worldwide. And we also have our own Web3 crypto incubator program called BFG Superstars. I will explain more about BFG Superstars at the end of today's session, so stay tuned. So briefly as well, our board of directors and executive partners consist of experts in the field of academia, investment, entrepreneurial, as well as legal. So we really have a great team that supports our backend. This is our BFG core team. We are also run by experienced builders with expertise ranging from company building, analytics, sales, and marketing. During our incubation program, we already have kickstarted more than 10 startups through our incubation program. 2 of them are here. We are represented by Modupe from meCash and Aakarsh from SignaX. So that is briefly about BFG. And without further ado, let's get into the panel. Today, I'm joined by 5 panelists who will share with you their experience regarding Web3 startup in the UK, both from the company builders / accelerators, as well as startup founders. I will give the floor for them to do a quick intro. Maybe Pete, would you like to start first?
Yeah, hey everyone, and thanks Albert and Melissa for asking me to join. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Pete Townsend. I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. I am based in Ireland. We run this as a virtual program, though. We're building with entrepreneurs who are working on the decentralized internet and tokenized economies and helping to onboard the first 1 billion users of Web3. I've been in the blockchain, crypto, and fintech space since 2016 as an advisor, a board director, an investor, a podcaster as well. I run the Money Never Sleeps podcast, where we look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of finance, technology, startups, enterprise, and life as we know it. And again, awesome to be here. So thanks again for asking me to join.
Thank you, Pete. Next, Des, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Albert and Melissa. Good to be here. And hello, everyone. So I'm Des Martin. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Outlier Ventures. Outlier Ventures has been around since 2014, so we are an OG in Web3 terms. We've invested in over 220 Web3 projects, and we're actually accelerating now. We see this as a really interesting time to be doubling down. So we have just brought in 40 teams into our Basecamp Accelerator, and we're gearing up to be doing 50 teams per quarter. So that's a little bit about myself and Outlier. I was previously with Brave Browser, the privacy and crypto-friendly browser, where I helped them scale over a pretty rapid period over 3 years. That's a little bit about myself.
Thanks, Des, for the introduction. Next, Aakarsh, would you like to say a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Aakarsh Naidu. I'm the co-founder of SignaX. At SignaX, we are building metaverse experiences for brands, enterprises, and creators. When we say this, we are creating an end-to-end ecosystem where metaverse experiences can be developed at scale. We are a BFG portfolio company. We've been invested by BFG, and I am an alumnus of the London School of Economics prior to starting this venture, and I also have the experience of working with Meta or Facebook, which was my first exposure to the whole metaverse and AR/VR space. And yeah, I mean, I've also founded one venture which was successfully acquired. And here I am to solve problems in the Web3 and metaverse space through SignaX. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Aakarsh. Next, Fraser, would you like to go next?
Hi all, and yeah, just want to say thank you again for having me on the panel. So, hi, I'm Fraser, CEO of cheqd, where we're building payment rails and commercial models for self-sovereign ID or decentralized reputation, whatever you want to call it. Roughly the idea that individuals should hold and control their data. So we're basically making that commercially viable using our own layer one, as well as a load of tooling on top. And prior to this, I used to work for Accenture, working across self-sovereign ID with the World Economic Forum, a couple of governments, and prior to that, have a background in central bank digital currencies, working with a couple of central banks and co-authoring patents in that space. So yeah, a bit of a jack of all trades, but looking forward to the panel.
Awesome, nice, thank you. Next, Modupe, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Modupe Diyaolu. I'm based in London, and we're building meCash. So meCash is a cross-border payment solutions using blockchain. Our use case is stablecoins, and we're allowing small businesses to send and receive cross-border payments for goods and services. I'm ex-PayPal, spent the last 4 years in PayPal within payments. Before then, about 15 odd experience within financial services in Europe, but facing up to emerging markets, Latin America and Asia. And my area of expertise is obtaining licenses, operationalizing licenses, new markets within emerging markets. And I'm an alumni of Oxford University, Said Business School, and Cambridge University, studied engineering. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introductions, all panelists. Yeah, then let's get started. So as we know, our topic for today is how to start your Web3 startup in the UK. But first, I would like to ask maybe a general question to our panelists today, like how are the Web3 ecosystem and environment in the UK in general? Perhaps Pete or Dev, would you like to share first regarding this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go first. Des, you cool with that?
Yeah, sure. Go.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the Web3 environment right now in general, globally, and then we could focus on the UK, is a very interesting space. Obviously, in the last year, we've been through quite a lot of change, quite a lot of adaptations that startups have had to go through. There have been changes in fundraising strategies that new projects and startups have had to undertake in Web3. There have been changes in product strategies. There's been obviously all the leverage that was in the market with Celsius, 3 Arrows Capital, Voyager, FTX, now Genesis, all just going away. And obviously had a huge impact on price, had a huge impact on the treasuries, really, of those that are investing in this space that have been in crypto for a long time. And obviously, including in this Web3 definition, crypto, DeFi, metaverse, DAO, the NFT space, and each one of these strands are unfolding in a little bit of a different direction. And we see this kind of segregation starting to happen and less dependency on the price of Bitcoin, for example, in this space, and where we have a lot more enterprise level investment, enterprise level interest that has been cropping up. Web2 investors that have been in this space for a long time. I was just with Union Square Ventures last week in New York, and they've invested in Coinbase in 2012, right? And that they have a long-term view on this space. So, there was a whole just big chunk of activity in the market, investment activity in the market, and even startups in the market in Web3 that may not have been there for the right reasons. And that has just shrunken considerably. I'm a fan of that. We did an event last week for Techstars Web3 in New York, and the last question that we asked Nick Grossman from Union Square Ventures was, hey, do you want to see all this, the market return? Do you want to see the days of, Bitcoin at 69, 70,000? And all this leverage come back? And Nick's answer was yes, but not yet. We have so much to build, and because there's tons to build right now. So one of the headwinds that we're all facing right now is just the FUD that's out there, and where just listening to different podcasts with investors that had been in the space in 2021, just this morning, where it was clear that they were kind of looking at this space almost as if when Enron happened back in 2000, And for those who don't remember, Enron was a kind of combination of a derivatives business and an energy business that was just way overextended. And it's with what's happened right now in Web3, some investors are looking at the space as if to say, when Enron happened, we're going to say, Jesus, electricity, it's a scam. You know, what do we do about this electricity thing? You know, look what it's done. Right. And when clearly what's happened with the likes of FTX and others really had nothing to do with crypto. It was two things. It was one, you know, bad company management, bad organization, and perhaps a little bit of fraud thrown in there. Maybe more, we'll see, allegedly. But also to the fact that we don't yet have proper right size regulation around crypto, and that people can run these quasi banks really and lend out 100% of customer deposits without any without any impact, even though it's in your terms and conditions. So a lot to tackle right now, but with the, you know, what we've seen coming in terms of the projects into our Web3 accelerator, applications are open for another week, that the volumes are unbelievable. So many really good projects out there. We're sourcing globally, got a big chunk from the UK. So it just gives me a huge amount of comfort that builders are still building, and they're building better.
Awesome. Yeah. That's really interesting, right? Because the same sentiment happens again and again, like in the case of Amron that you explained, like when something happened to the industry, they blame like the industry for, so, oh, electricity is bad, or oh, internet is bad, Web2 is bad, but now it's Web3 is bad because of the industry. But really, if you look deep dive, it's actually the management, right? How they manage the business. Probably that, would you like to add some points on this?
Yeah, sure. I maybe echo most of the things that Pete has just mentioned there. And I think the way I kind of look at these periods, the tourists, the people who kind of came when prices were frothy and everything was exuberant, those people are leaving, right? And the builders are sticking around, and it's really reassuring. And you know, Pete was mentioning there in terms of applications on our side, you know, our applications for this quarter, applications are now closed, but the volume and the quality was some of the best we've ever seen. And, you know, it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of people who worked for huge tech companies that were sitting there thinking about something for a period of time. And now they have the time, with tech companies shedding people and people looking to transition. There's some really bright people looking to do some really disruptive things. And that's kind of the key, right? If you've got good people trying to solve real world problems, problems that make people excited about paying for, I think that's a key part. You know, there's a lot of promise. But some other things that we're seeing, just to maybe expand on this, is that all that FUD that Pete mentioned, it hasn't deterred brands. Like we're speaking to big brands who want to do stuff in this space, and they are smart enough and educated enough to be able to say, okay, we get FTX, we get that was, to Pete's analogy, like an Enron moment, but there's all this other tech. We're not lumping it all together. And that's really good, because in earlier cycles, everything was in one bucket. Now there is enough knowledge to say, okay, there was some bad actors, but there's a whole lot of other good stuff here. Let's use the good stuff. Let's evolve and let's work with that. So I think it's a really positive time. And I think this is the time when the builders come out, right? This is the time when we lay the foundations for really solid growth. And that goes back not just to .com. You know, we were talking about Enron, and you can go back to like railroads, and people thinking when there was initial speculation on railroads that like it was all a con, but like railroads proved to be pretty successful and important, right? So this stuff it's ingrained in human nature, but it's gonna, you know, we're laying really solid foundations at the moment.
Yeah, I second that as well. So I think we can agree that there's still like a lot of opportunities, especially with these different verticals right now. They're starting to get segregated within their specializations. Do you see, like, is there any like specific verticals that's going or happening in the UK specifically from your experience? Like we have like DAO, we have NFT, we have metaverse. Is there any like very specific verticals that's like happening or like hot right now?
Can I answer that? Is it to this?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Yes. So thanks, Albert. I did, before moving to the UK, I did study the market thoroughly, the various opportunities that the ecosystem presented. And I want to touch upon 3 particular opportunities that caught my attention. So apart from that, I also want to talk about what the government regulations are when it comes to supporting Web3 startups in the UK. So first and foremost, I think the Prime Minister and the government have taken a very forward-looking step when it comes to the Web3 ecosystem broadly. They want to kind of bring in a legislation which kind of looks at crypto at large, but also to be able to support distributed ledger technology and blockchain in particular. So there are 2 or 3 specific actions which are a positive boost for the Web3 startups. One is that they're looking to bring stable coins into the ambit of the day-to-day transactions, so that adoption of these cryptos, stable coins can become more mainstream. They're also saying that they want to create a royal mint in the form of an NFT, so that the government is also symbolizing that they're really taking this step forward. And apart from that, I think they also want to make UK as a crypto asset hub of the globe. So these are some of the positive developments. Within this context, there are 1 or 2 sectors that I want to touch upon. DeFi has been a very, very interesting proposition in the UK, mainly because UK is like a financial hub, so to say, and a lot of experiments take place. Revolut has come up, kind of from the UK and so on. There've been a lot of big companies. So I think DeFi presents a great opportunity within the ambit of the overall financial ecosystem. Good to see some of the fellow startup founders on this panel today from that space. So that's one thing. The second aspect is GameFi, which is going to be quite interesting because almost 1/3 of the population in UK is under the age of 25. So this presents an opportunity to create more immersive experiences for Gen Z and the younger crowd who are digital natives and are quite comfortable dealing with cryptos. So yeah, I think these are some of the opportunities that I particularly see within the UK ecosystem, and yeah, I guess that's how we're here.
Awesome. Fraser, would you like to add on that?
Yeah, to build on Aakarsh's point, it kind of trades on the traditional focus or benefits of the UK. It's a lot of financial work. There's a lot of, whether you're using DeFi to talk about purely decentralized protocols or centralized lenders, that kind of thing, there's a lot of work going down that path, just because, I guess, to Des' and Pete's point earlier, you've got a lot of people leaving the industries that are native to the UK looking to do something interesting. And because we have a massive financial hub here, they're basically walking straight out of those jobs and going, I want to do something cool, brand new. And it's a natural home for them just using new tech. And you're also kind of seeing that, to Aakarsh's point, in the regulations and the work by the government going through with things like when our current Prime Minister was Chancellor, he made this big statement of the UK being the home to crypto worldwide, especially on the financial side. And so you've got efforts going across the FCA sandbox, HM Treasury, in terms of having crypto firms help shape regulation as they come through, rather than it just being kind of slapped in. I'd say the other part that's kind of slowly coming through, but it's been a long time, has been kind of where we're focusing, which is enabling kind of the data economy, specifically kind of moving into a self-sovereign model. Over the past probably decade, most of that's been driven by the EU, but it looks like the UK is finally waking up to that and pushing those kind of regs through. So I'd say it's still heavily financial, but there's starting to be a shift into other areas, including data.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I want to also touch with regards to the regulatory to Modupe as well, because your business is highly regulated, right? So would you like to add on that?
Yeah. So meCash is sitting within the financial services. So we're using the aspect of blockchain that we're using that is regulated is stable coins. I do agree that a lot of the work in the UK, supported by these by the Bank of England and the FCA and the PRA, is really around financial applications of blockchain. I think a couple of years ago, it was 2 years ago, all crypto exchanges had to formally register with the FCA with a focus on AML compliance. I know the regulators are very concerned about consumer protection, especially what happened with FTX. How do you protect customer deposit? But that's not different from what happened in 2008 with the great financial crash anyway. I think we welcome regulation. I think ultimately you're taking a request from a customer, a retail customer or a small business, and you're collecting money, whether it's fiat or stable coins, and you're delivering it somewhere else. So I think the Web3 community itself, it's not adverse to regulation. We understand that consumer protection is important. We also understand that deposits and consumer deposits and retail deposits are very important. FCA is very pro blockchain. Like was mentioned, there's a sandbox which you can apply for. It gives you regulatory cover for a couple of years before you then formally apply for a license. There are different tiers of licenses also. So at meCash, whilst we're building on Web 3.0, we're very pro-regulation, and we're looking for any parallel license or regulatory license framework from Web 2.0, just to give the customer that level of trust and comfort. And I think that's important within finance, if you're delivering a financial services product using blockchain. I think the other aspect that's quite interesting is EdTech. So I'm seeing a lot of application around how education services are being delivered using blockchain. It's not a regulated environment, but it's you go into schools now, you see people looking at blockchain applications for different services and products. So I think that's what we're going to see a growth of that in the next couple of years, I think, in the UK.
Fraser, would you like to add on that? I saw your hands raised.
Yeah, just really briefly, it was I think it was almost the upside of FTX is there's been like not just a government shift towards like regulation, which was always coming, but there's been more of a community want for it as well. Everyone's kind of gone like, we can't have this happen again, which historically like the community's always been like, no regulation, like complete free for all. It should be like the Wild West, and just that's the way it should stay. And I think what's happening is you're having like the next wave of users coming through going like, no, like we need some guardrails. Like obviously not everyone in this ecosystem can be trusted. And I think that narrative has really, really shifted. And I think as a result, if we're talking about the UK here, it's starting to bring like Web3 companies closer to better regulated countries where they have stronger regs. Like there's a good reason why a lot of people have gone to, say, Singapore, because it has a really strong regulator that is like technically literate, understands the market, and is driven by business. And it's shifting away from like offshore havens and coming back a little bit more where people are starting to look for like reputation so that they can go and start engaging like big corporations, lots of users who are going to be looking for that like kind of trust mark and make sure they're in somewhere that they trust.
I think also what we've seen is traditional banks going to blockchain companies asking for technology. And in doing so, you find that you're building a Web 3.0 solution where it's required by Citibank or is required by Deutsche Bank. These are regulated environments, and they can be very useful distribution channels. So it's getting closer in terms of, people want the blockchain technology. You're delivering services to regulated environments. There somehow needs to be there needs to be a closer link in terms of regulation, because you have to deliver to the regulatory cover. And I think also UK leading the way in terms of regulatory framework is actually quite useful, because the FCA and the PRA are seen as very credible regulators worldwide. So, for example, you're likely to get into the UAE sandbox or get into a sandbox in Asia if you regulated by the FCA, for example, or you've been through the FCA regulatory sandbox. So actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and if you work very closely with the regulators, you have good risk and compliance covers, and you do adhere to guidelines. It's a win-win, I think, even for global expansion if you're starting from the UK.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Just go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I'd say on that front, on the regulatory side, that when we're looking at Web3 and seeing there are parts of it that do need to be regulated, right? Where you've got primarily on the crypto side, where you've got technology companies, very much so is what these companies are and these businesses are, that are bringing to market products that require financial regulation. right? And so that is a different type of approach than saying, hey, I'm going to start a financial institution, or I'm going to start a fintech. And that getting that right and getting that balance right in any business that you're starting between, hey, we're a tech company, we want to move at tech company pace and speed and lightning and time warp, all of that wonderful. But you need to actually look, what is the regulatory environment that you're operating in? And what is the type of operational controls and reporting that we need to put in place? What is the operating model that we need to put in place in order to then start ticking the boxes in terms of the regulatory approach? The FCA, the sandbox is a great example, because they assign you with these case officers basically that help you through it and say, well, maybe you need a little bit more on your compliance policy, on your KYC, on your AML, on your, your second and third lines of defense here, on your safeguarding, on your, on whatever, in order to really pass muster when it comes to the regulatory side. But again, that's going to be a lot just in those that are doing kind of crypto, and then what I call these, a lot of folks talk about these DeFi mullets, right? So that you've got, fintech up front and DeFi in the back, and when you move and shift to the rest of Web3, with the NFT space, with DAOs, with metaverse, I think we can leave metaverse aside from a regulatory perspective right now, just because it's so nascent. But that, eventually it will be financial transactions taking place in virtual zones. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. On the NFT side, seeing some projects bring NFTs to market that clearly look a lot like securities, right? And you just got to be careful there with the path you go down. And on the DAO side, that to the great extent, what we're seeing from DAOs is that they are investment DAOs. And so I think it's either Alliance DAO or Syndicate DAO in the US that are basically allowing what are these investment clubs to form, which don't require regulation in the US, as long as they meet certain criteria, and that forming DAOs around that, which is great. And then, but when you get a little bit bigger, what you're seeing is that most of these are backed by LPs or LLCs. And so there's going to be a regulatory, focus on DAOs as well, and what are the tokens that they're issuing, and what benefits do those tokens bring. So I think it's I really like the setup that the FCA had. I really like the level of engagement that they have with the startup community. It's a really powerful asset for the UK as a market. And it's something that I think that other jurisdictions should seek to replicate. And I could go on, and I won't. I'll stop here on this topic, because we could do a whole nother, insight into how the UK regulatory ethos around fintech and crypto and DeFi differs to that of what's happening with EU right now, which is a little bit of a different kettle of fish. But I'll stop there.
Absolutely, Des, please.
Sure, and maybe just to build on everything that was mentioned by the other panelists, I think regulation will play an important part in the next wave of capital that comes into the space. I think that's really important, particularly for founders looking ahead. And I think the UK has been pretty proactive and is setting a good, obviously there's work to do, but there's some good signs. So I think that's an interesting trend, particularly for founders who kind of have to look around corners. That combination of regulation and the UK trying to be forward-looking, it creates a better playing field for both investors and for founders, and that's all you can ask for over time, right? You want to create the conditions for startups and projects to flourish.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more that regulations will pave the future for this industry. So we discussed a lot of advantage or good points why you can build startup in the UK, Web3 startup in the UK. But perhaps you could also, maybe any one of you could explain how exactly Web3 startups collaborate with other players in the ecosystem, such as universities, research institutions, governments, or other players in the UK, especially. Maybe, Modupe, would you like to share some of it about this?
Yeah, I think being located in the UK, it's a good thing. I particularly like the number of accelerators within Web 3.0 or even Web 2 that currently exist. And given that we're in the world of remote working now, you don't physically have to fly to the US or anywhere else. But the UK is building out a good run of accelerators. If you've got a Web 3.0 idea, just Google it. Every day I come across a new accelerator program, and especially when you're at the idea stage, just going to one of those accelerators, use it to flush out your idea and your proof of concept. And sometimes you can do that while you still have a day job. So the flood of accelerators, there's a Techstars Web 3.0, there's Blockchain Founders Group, there's Accelerator in Switzerland. I found a couple in London this week also. So I think it's becoming it's very quickly catching up with the US in terms of incubators and accelerators and venture builders that anyone that has a Web 3.0 idea can jump into. Very simple application process too. So that's one. I think also, so meCash, we're building a cross-border solution, but our starting market is the African continent. And for us, it's about stitching together the 55 countries and the 41 currencies by trade, allowing small businesses to interact with each other across the continent. But we're HQ in London. And the reason why we're HQ in London is because we're a remote first organization and we have a global team. So our team, we have people in Estonia, people in West Africa, people in Canada. UK seems to be a perfect hub for that kind of remote working. Despite the fact that that's our primary market is about 1 or 2 hours time zone away from England. So for us, it's perfect for talents. It's also perfect for interaction. So, for example, I recently joined a UK WhatsApp group of 800 founders, all at idealization stage. I think that's really quite interesting, and I don't think there are many places apart from the US where you will find that kind of network. I think we've talked about regulation, the fact that the UK regulators are well ahead. If you're developing anything around regulations, it gives you credibility being based in the UK. It's a financial hub. Anything to do with finance, if you're based in the UK, it's an hour away from Europe. I think it's an absolute great location for connection, for talent, and for network support, and for accelerators. Where I think UK is slightly behind is in terms of VCs and institutional investments within the space. I think the US is way ahead. You talk about Coinbase, you talk about the first group of Web 3.0 founders. Most of the investments have come from the US. I think venture builders are catching up, but they're pretty much small tickets for now. But the big ticket items, people patient and willing to take a risk, people just looking for founders that want to build, rather than looking for founders that they want to see margins, they want to see traction, they want to see revenue. UK is still very cautious, I think. The VCs are still very cautious within this space compared to the US. And the universities are great. Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, all of them have blockchain, whether it's a blockchain focused programs, whether it's blockchain focused accelerators, whether it's blockchain or Web 3.0 pitch competitions. So there's a whole wealth of educational experience also that you can get out if you're located in the UK. So that's one of my pluses of being here.
Awesome. Maybe Fraser or Aakarsh, would you like to share as well your experience in collaborating with these different parties?
Yeah, can do. So I think just one bit that's also worth mentioning is like it's so easy in the UK to just start up a company for anything. Like it is very, very easy to start something like on Companies House can take like less than half an hour. You've got tooling out there that can set up bank accounts and accounting extremely quickly. It's just the infrastructure for like getting something started, even if that's not where you keep it, is very, very good. I think in terms of like collaborating with organizations in the UK, like Modupe's kind of point around like going into the accelerators is right. Like there are so many and they've all got very different focuses. Like you can go from something that's like super early stage all the way through to like when I was at Accenture, I was one of the mentors at Accenture's FinTech Innovation Lab. And that's very much focused on like people who they already have some element of product market fit. And now they're looking at how to get into enterprises. So regardless of what stage you're at, there's someone to go and speak to. I think if we then look at like universities and grants and that kind of thing, there's a lot out there, but I think the one thing that's quite challenging is finding the right people where. we've been very lucky with one of our advisors who's looped us into kind of speaking with a load of the UK universities. But without her, you are kind of looking to the programs that were mentioned before. Like you're looking at like very, very specific applications, whereas actually you may have something that is completely niche that goes into a different area of the university that just doesn't speak to this area at all. So it's good, but I think it could still be better, and it all comes down to traditional networking, to be honest. And I think if then focusing on something else you shared there was like remote working. Like we're exactly the same. Like most of our team is outside of the UK, so we have like a bit of a nexus here. But the reality is like we're completely remote. It's rare that we see anyone in the office. But at the same time, it's like it's a convenient time zone. All the infrastructure is here to get it set up quickly, and then it's a case of like looking at where your markets are and then starting to shift that focus to wherever they are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I just sort of wanted to summarize. I think most of the points were well made by all the founders and the investors as well. So few things that I see, from an ecosystem perspective, primarily is the fact that UK is very friendly to set up a business, as Fraser was mentioning. Even for us, it took less than a week to actually. Actually, it's just about a few days to kind of start a company. And one of the challenges, of course, where UK you face is opening up a bank account, which usually takes a lot of time because it's highly regulated. So that's where I found the points made by Modupe quite interesting, because UK has traditionally been a highly regulated economy when it comes to the financial markets, and to even open up a single bank account is usually time consuming. But the fact, and on the other hand, when we're talking about Web3, it's more decentralized and unregulated, so to say. And to bring both these worlds together is by definition quite difficult. But the way, the kind of steps that the government has been taking to proactively work to maintain the spirit of decentralization, as well as bring in the reputation of centralization, has been a great step. So that's, I think, one of the key objectives. The third aspect is when it comes to the global presence as such. Like being a UK headquartered company gives you access to many major economies across the globe, primarily from a visibility and a distance perspective as well. So that's been one of the greatest points for me to be a founder based in the UK. This is especially advantageous in a virtual working environment, because Web3 as a community has evolved in a virtual fashion. Like it evolved through the pandemic, today I talk to people, gaming guilds, metaverse builders in Southeast Asia, in the US, wherever. So it's a globally distributed community as such, and being, of course, UK based gives you an advantage, but particularly being located there does not have, I would say, any plus advantage, but just being from a positioning perspective. And finally, touching upon the universities aspect, as some of the earlier speakers mentioned, universities have set up a dedicated infrastructure around blockchain itself, like London School of Economics, because I'm an alum from there. I know for a fact that they've been set up on Hedera hashgraph ecosystem, so where they're actively working towards building these decentralized experiences for the broader community. Corporates have been open to the extent that, especially in our sector, where we're looking at metaverse development, corporates have dedicated specific resources towards the metaverse per se, by way of deploying people, but also I think they've been cautiously optimistic, where they're saying that we would want to run pilots. So to that extent, they've been quite open to experiment with startups in the Web3 space. So yeah, I guess these are some of the points that I wanted to touch.
Can I build on a couple of those points, Aakarsh?
Yes, absolutely.
And Albert, yeah, just building on what you said, Aakarsh, about the virtual nature of all this is critically important. One of the big things we focus on at Techstars is founder mental health, right? And I was speaking with someone yesterday who we'd like to get involved in our program, in our upcoming program, and I said, listen, just so you know, we are a virtual program. We're going to meet up 3 times during the course of the program between April and June. Once in Dublin for a week. We're going to do London for a week in May, and then Toronto for a week in June at the end of the program. And that those other 10 weeks are entirely virtual. And that what we're doing right now, is the extent of your interaction with the team, with the cohort, with everybody. So you got to get into the mindset where this is something that is natural for you. In Web3, because of the global and borderless nature of it, that it is kind of par for the course and status quo. But when you're thinking about founding a Web3 project, you got to think about that context, is that it's not all, hey, let's get the team together. Those chats in front of the coffee machine are chats just like this that happen every morning, and people just need to get their head around that. That being said, if you're living in the UK, the fantastic community that you have in London, in Oxford, in Cambridge, even up in Edinburgh, where I've spent a lot of time, that, well, after 5 o'clock, get out to the events, and make sure that you can engage with the community. Critically important. Everyone's different, introverts versus extroverts, on how you get your energy. I get my energy off of other people. After this, I am actually going into the city center of Dublin for the day to Dogpatch Labs, doing a masterclass on something with a good friend. Very excited about that, because I've been right here all week. So it's one thing to take note of when you are launching, but make sure you do, get yourself into a good community in real life, right? Physically as well.
And maybe if I could just jump in and riff on that, if it's okay, Albert.
Yes.
We're seeing very similar things, and obviously our accelerator, virtual and global as well. One of the things that we've been focusing on is how remote teams can bring together a sense of culture, right? So that's really important for an early stage startup. If people are distributed, HQ might be in the UK, it might be in different parts of the world, but if people are distributed, how do you create that culture, that sense of togetherness through a virtual world, right? And it's something that we as an organization have been thinking about for some time. Our programs have been virtual for over 3 years. So I think it's a really important thing to consider as a founder. More than likely in Web3, you're going to have a distributed team. You're going to be connecting, as Pete says, through this sort of environment. How do you create that culture that enables people to weather all the ups and downs that come with being a founder, right? And come with being an early stage member of a team. So I think that's a really important thing to consider. And actually, the time zone of the UK really helps, because you'll have people in the UK, you have people in Europe, and the crossover culture, you do need to spend a certain amount of time together with people, even if it's virtually. And I think the time zone of the UK is actually really beneficial, because you have this crossover between Europe, Africa, the US, and even some overlap with Middle Eastern parts of Asia. And I think it's a real advantage that is often underspoken about.
Nice, thanks for sharing. Yes,
important one related to what they said. I think the key aspect that other founders have also mentioned is that there's got a strong accelerator and incubator ecosystem within the UK, where early stage startup founders are slowly starting to leverage, because that's where the conversations are happening. Some of these programs have moved from, say, virtual to a blended kind of model where, we're having these meetups once a while. So one thing that I come across in these meetups is you see the same faces, and, the community is small, but it is kind of growing. So that's something that is good in a way, because you build a close-knit community by just simply showing up at these events. So that's something which is good. And we've also been able to build a community of creators, 3D creators on our platform, specifically from the UK. So that is, and we've been organizing some meetings to just catch up with them physically as well, apart from the other aspects. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Awesome. Really like the directions of the conversations. Maybe because we are running out of time, I will just to wrap up our very nice panel discussion today with what advice would you give to our audience here, or to someone considering to found a Web3 startup in the UK? Maybe your lessons learned or any challenges that you have faced regarding the scaling your business. Maybe I think this is very beneficial for our attendance, our audience here.
Should I go?
Yes, absolutely, Modupe, please.
Okay, I think just do it.
Nice.
Do it, don't stop. It doesn't matter if you have a full-time job, just keep ticking it. Registration, you know, like Fraser said, you know, find a network, join LinkedIn group, find an accelerator, look at accelerators in Europe. Blockchain Founders Group funded us and they're based in Germany. You know, there's Techstars there. Everyone's, you know, there's the venture outliners. Find an accelerator, find a network, and just do it. I think that's it.
Lovely, very concise.
I'd repeat that. Like, just get started. Like, almost like making the wrong decision and finding that out is better than not making one at all. Like, you are far better getting it wrong, learning and doing the right thing in the space of 2 weeks than you are not doing anything for 2 weeks. Like, you'll learn so much more and get so much further. So I completely agree. Like, if you're in the UK and you're thinking of starting a company, just go do it. Even if you think you might shift it in the future due to like where your market is, where your regulation needs to be, like, just start and then figure it out as you go. Like, you won't find anything out from just sitting there pondering. Like, you just test what the limits are, test what your hypotheses are, and you'll very quickly find out answers. And kind of, because the UK is set up so well for like just starting something, like, it's very, very easy not just to start a company, but also to tear it down if you need to and shift it elsewhere. Like, it's not the end of the world if you have to like shut down a company after 6 to 12 months when you find out you need to be in a different geography. But you will have learned so much in starting that company and getting through that process that is still transferable to other markets that it's worth just getting started with.
Awesome. Maybe Des, Pete, or
echoing everything that was said before. But I think there's one additional thing, which is a huge sea change. The era of 0% interest rates is over. The idea that we could focus on kind of long-term metrics, like we'll just grow users, it will grow. You've got to focus on profitability, you know, much more so as a founder than any time over the last 10 years. So you've got to really be thinking about that as a near-term goal. And I'll put my Outlier Ventures hat on for a moment and say that our accelerator is opening up applications on the 30th of this month. So again, founders that are interested, you know, come talk to us, come apply. Just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, totally. And you know, I'd say as well is it's that dichotomy of near term versus long term, right? You're going to have near term struggles, money, people, you know, partners, everything going topsy-turvy. It's 29 really difficult days every month, but one good day that actually keeps you going. And what keeps you going is that long term. Do your thing. Focus on your vision. Get your team on board with that vision, and that you've got to block out some of this outside noise. People railing on about token prices. What are we going to do? We're going to pump it, whatever, to the moon. You just got to block that stuff out, because it's going to end up being more negative than positive. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's that dual side of near-term struggle with long-term vision. You got to keep both in check.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Aakarsh, yes.
Yeah, just sort of concluding, I think most of them have covered the points, but 3 or 4 or 5 points that I want to talk about. One, it's easy to start a company in the UK, so you must take advantage of that. 2, you have a very strong accelerator ecosystem out there in the UK. So applying to an accelerator would be a good step to kickstart your entrepreneurial journey. 3, the environment is much more safer to start a company, a Web3 company in the UK than what it was a couple of years ago, where, you know, Web3 companies were seen differently, or rather Web3 and crypto were, you know, put together. But now I think slowly people are starting to see that, you know, difference in or power in the kind of blockchain technologies. You know, 4, it's important to really kind of build your community so that, you know, especially when it comes to the Web3 world, people are working in different corners. So it's just really important to stay connected, to know what kind of opportunities exist. You know, the media is evolving around Web3, but it is on us to really see what's happening out there. And, you know, we need more of the Web2 founders to also come into Web3, because we've seen a new breed of entrepreneurs coming in, which brings in a fresh perspective. But conceptually speaking, realizing the power of a decentralized technology and bringing the experience of working on ventures or solutions in the Web2 world can actually accelerate the whole process of Web3 development, not only in UK but globally. So keep building is what I would conclude the point with.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for sharing your advice. We already have a question from our audience here. Okay. So the question for the panelists, my understanding is that one challenge facing many blockchain or crypto startups in the UK is the pushback from traditional institutions. For example, traditional banks not wanting to open bank accounts for these companies. Is it true in your experience, and do you see this shifting in the near future towards increased ease of doing business?
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
Very precise.
It's everyone's on a bell curve. So you've got, this whole space is a bell curve. You've got right down the middle, you've got the dissenters that will never talk to you if you talk about crypto, blockchain, Web3, whatever. You've got, and then if you look at the top 50%, you could probably cut that down right to 40%, 10%. And 10% are converted. The other 40% might you be able to get them over the line, but you've got to find that champion. You've got to find the champion at the right enterprise that believes in what you're doing, where you don't have to spend a half hour telling them about blockchain. And beware of some of the big corporates that are startup tourists and just want to feel cool by hanging out with you. Because I was one of those jerks a long time ago. I'm not one of them anymore.
I completely agree. It's quite a challenge to open a bank account if you're working in Web 3.0. So I know someone that's building a VR platform, and one of his use cases is converting some of those VR videos into NFTs. And just the fact that he has NFT attached to that, it was a no-no in terms of opening just an operational bank account. It's a challenge, but I think, like Pete said, it's evolving. And it's a curve. There's small pockets of financial institutions, usually new banks and startups that will support you. But keep at it. I would say that even to open a bank account as you get bigger, it does take up to 8 weeks. Even big corporations, when they go into a new market, it takes a while. So keep at it. Eventually, one will stick.
Awesome.
And there are plenty of services out there that you can use to get started. It doesn't there's obviously those historic stories of Barclays shut on NatWest or whoever it was, just shutting down mass accounts when everyone had bought an amount of Bitcoin, and they were just shutting accounts without any, they were just shutting them based on the fact that the transaction existed. I think that still happens. I think it's getting a bit easier. But there are ways to there are basically providers out there. There's a reason why Revolut has crypto elements native to its application, therefore it's friendly. You can look into the providers don't necessarily need to be based in the UK. So there are people like Bankera, you could use Wise. They each have their own restrictions and the things that they won't touch. But together, there's enough providers out there, you can make all of this work. At the same time, it's why so many people in Web3 are getting paid in stable coins is actually just individually, it's fine and you can manage it. But as a company, it's a bit more complex. But again, to go back to the original point, there are enough providers out there that you can use that you're not just blocked off as a company from financial infrastructure.
Totally agree. Des or Aakarsh, would you like to share anything?
Yeah, I think I did mention in my earlier point that opening a bank account is one of the biggest challenges in the UK. Apart from it's really open. You can open the company in in a day, but it takes about 2 to 3 months patiently working with the bank. Of course, having some introductions, referrals helps, but it in itself cannot be accelerated. And the question is very, very right. That traditional banks are a little wary and skeptical of Web3 companies to kind of open an account, but also, as Fraser rightly pointed out, the neobanks. In fact, our journey also started with the kind of a neobank where these banks like Revolut, Wise, other payment solutions, which help you get started off the ground. So it is not really a hindrance. And the other aspect is the GDPR regulations as well. I mean, just sort of extending this, thing to the regulation side. While there is a challenge in terms of the number of regulations in terms of data management concern, but also increasingly we've seen that decentralized technology is presenting an opportunity, like blockchain is presenting an opportunity to solve some of these problems within the whole GDPR space. So yeah, I guess there's no answer to it. We're just going with how the system is going with us. But yeah, broadly, I think with the government coming in, hopefully it should be much more faster to open these accounts.
Awesome, good conclusion remark there, Aakarsh. We still have some more questions, but unfortunately, I think we are running out of time. So again, I would like to thank you everyone here, Pete, Des, Fraser, Modupe, Aakarsh, for attending this panel. I hope everyone that's attending this panel as well, wherever you are from YouTube Live, gain a lot of very insightful knowledge from these founders and these people, the accelerators, and it inspires you to build your own Web3 startup, especially in the UK. So quickly, before we wrap up our panel today, I would just to do a little bit information, as I mentioned earlier. So we are opening our next incubator program. It's called the PhD Superstars. Our season 3 is coming up soon. Application deadline is closing at February 17, 2023. These are our focus areas. If you're interested in Woodley crypto, DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, and etc., you can scan the QR code here, and then from March to June, we will see you during the mentorship, and hopefully at the end of the day, you'll secure funding, as we have in our teams here, Modupe and Aakarsh, and then yeah. And then we also have our AMA sessions. It's coming up on next week, or the week after, February 8th at 11 a.m. CT or 10 a.m. GMT. You can also scan the QR code here to register for AMA session. Yeah, so that's it for today. I'm so happy to share it with everyone, all of you, and thank you again for our dear panelists. I'm hoping for the best for all of you, and yeah, let's hope to see each other again soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Awesome chat. See you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Aakarsh. Thanks, Fraser. Bye.